It was still early morning when the messenger arrived at the friary of San Giovanni Rotondo. He had come from a village some distance away, bearing news that no one wanted to carry. A young man had died during the night. An accident, they said, sudden. Without warning, the family had asked that Padre Pio be informed, that he might offer prayers for the soul of the deceased. But when the messenger was brought before the friar, he found something he had not expected. Padre Pio already knew. According to the oral accounts preserved in the San Giovanni Rotondo archives, the friar had been awake since before dawn, praying in his cell, and when the messenger began to speak, Padre Pio raised his hand to stop him. He said only this: he had 1 moment left. He used it. The messenger did not understand. He asked what the friar meant, but Padre Pio said nothing more. He turned back toward his prayer, and the conversation was finished. What did he mean, 1 moment left? And what does it mean to use it? This is the question that remains. It is the question that the world does not ask, because the world measures life differently. The world counts years. The world speaks of potential. When a young man dies, the world says his life was cut short, that he never had the chance to become what he might have been. But Padre Pio did not speak this way. According to the testimonies of the friars who lived alongside him, he rarely commented on the length of a life. He spoke instead of the state of the soul. He spoke of the moment, the final moment when everything was decided. Dr. Giorgio Festa, the physician who examined Padre Pio's stigmata on multiple occasions and documented his findings for ecclesiastical review, recorded that the friar possessed an inexplicable awareness of deaths occurring at great distances. He would know before any message arrived. He would sometimes weep. Other times, he would fall into a silence so complete that no one dared approach him. Dr. Festa could not explain this phenomenon medically. He noted only that it was consistent, that it occurred repeatedly over the years he observed Padre Pio, and that the friar's knowledge was never wrong. The death had always occurred. The timing was always precise. But Padre Pio's knowledge was not limited to the fact of death. According to those who witnessed his reactions, he seemed to perceive something more, something about the soul itself, at the instant of its departure. He did not always speak of what he saw. In fact, he rarely did. But his response, whether grief, or peace, or urgent prayer, suggested that he had seen the choice that was made in that final breath. And this is what disturbs us. This is what we do not wish to consider. That death is not merely an ending, but a decision. That in the last moment of life, something is chosen, something irrevocable, something eternal. The young man who died that night was known to Padre Pio. He had visited the friary before. He had gone to confession. According to the accounts preserved in the archives, he was like many young men of his time, full of life, distracted by the world, not particularly devout, but not hostile to faith either. He believed in the way that many believe, abstractly, distantly, without urgency. He assumed he had time. He assumed that the serious questions, the questions of the soul, of eternity, of judgment, could be addressed later, when he was older, when life had slowed down. He did not know that his life would not slow down. He did not know that it would stop, suddenly, without announcement, on an ordinary night, when nothing seemed different from any other night. This is the first weight the listener must carry. The young man did not know. And neither do we. In the Book of Wisdom, chapter 4, verses 7 through 13, there is a passage that the Church has long applied to those who die young. It speaks of the righteous who are taken early, and it says something that contradicts everything the world believes about time. Being perfected in a short time, the text reads, "He fulfilled long years, for his soul was pleasing to the Lord. Therefore he took him quickly from the midst of wickedness." The passage does not say that a short life is incomplete. It says that a short life can be more complete than a long one. It says that God does not measure as we measure. A man who lives 90 years may die less prepared than a child who lives 9. A young man who dies suddenly may have fulfilled everything that was required of him, or he may have fulfilled nothing. The length of the life tells us nothing. Only the state of the soul tells the truth. But how do we know the state of the soul? We do not. This is the unbearable fact. We do not know. We cannot see what Padre Pio saw. We cannot perceive the interior reality of another person's heart at the moment of death. We speak of heaven and hell as if they were distant places. But Padre Pio understood them as present realities, realities that a soul enters not after some long journey, but immediately, in the very instant that the body fails. According to his letters, he wrote of death not as a passage, but as an arrival. The soul does not travel somewhere. The soul reveals where it already is. Death is not the beginning of eternity. It is the unveiling of the eternity that was already present, hidden within the choices made in life. And this is why the final moment matters so greatly. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 44, Christ speaks with a severity that the modern world prefers to forget. Therefore, you also must be ready. He says, "For the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." The words are not addressed to the elderly. They are not addressed to the sick. They are addressed to everyone. The hour is unknown. It could be tonight. It could be decades from now. But it will come, and when it comes, there will be no extension, no negotiation, no second attempt. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, in paragraph 10:14, echoes this teaching with a directness that admits no evasion. The Church encourages the faithful to prepare for the hour of death, because at death, the particular judgment occurs, and the soul's eternal destiny is sealed. Sealed. The word is final. It does not allow for revision. When Padre Pio learned of the young man's death, he did not offer comfort to those who came seeking it. According to the testimonies of the friars present that day, he did not say that the young man was at peace. He did not say that he was with God. He said nothing at all about the destination of the soul. What he did was pray. He prayed for hours. He prayed through the morning and into the afternoon. He prayed with an intensity that those who witnessed it found almost frightening. One friar, whose account is preserved in the oral tradition of the community, said that Padre Pio's face during those hours of prayer was not serene. It was strained, as if he were laboring under a great weight, as if he were fighting for something that was not yet decided. But how could anything still be undecided? If the young man had made his choice in the final moment, if his soul had already arrived at its eternal destination, what was there left to fight for? This is the tension that the Church holds without resolving. The particular judgment is immediate, the soul's choice is final, and yet the Church prays for the dead. The Church has always prayed for the dead. She prays because there is a mystery here that exceeds human understanding, a mystery involving time, mercy, and the strange economy of grace that allows the prayers of the living to reach backward or forward, or in some direction that has no name in human language. Padre Pio prayed for the young man, not because he doubted the finality of death, but because he understood that prayer participates in a reality larger than the linear sequence of events. The moment of death is fixed in earthly time, but God is not bound by earthly time, and the prayers offered after death may be, in ways we cannot comprehend, present to the soul at the very moment of its choosing. This is not doctrine, this is mystery, and mystery is not the same as uncertainty. Mystery is the presence of a truth too vast for human categories. The young man who died that night was not a saint. He was not a sinner in any dramatic sense. He was ordinary. He had not committed great evils. He had not performed great acts of virtue. He had lived the way most people live, somewhere in between, neither hot nor cold. And this is perhaps the most disturbing thing of all, because the extraordinary sinners and the extraordinary saints are rare. Most of us are ordinary. Most of us live in the middle territory, where the choices are small and the consequences seem distant. We do not feel the urgency of eternity, because eternity does not feel urgent. It feels abstract. It feels far away. It feels like something we will deal with later. But Padre Pio saw what later looks like when it arrives without warning. He saw souls who had assumed they had time. He saw souls who had postponed repentance, postponed conversion, postponed the serious examination of conscience that the gospel demands. And he saw what happened when the postponement ended, not gradually, not gently, but suddenly, in a single instant that allowed no further delay. In one of his letters, Padre Pio wrote of the soul's final moment with a gravity that admits no sentimentality. He spoke of it not as a passive event, but as an active choice, a choice that crystallizes everything the soul has been throughout its life. The final moment does not change the soul, it reveals the soul. It shows what the soul has become through all its countless small decisions, all its habits of thought and desire, all its movements toward God or away from Him. And in that revelation, the soul either accepts what it sees and turns toward mercy, or it refuses what it sees and turns away. This is the choice. This is what Padre Pio meant when he said the young man had one moment left, and he used it. But used it how? Toward what? We are not told. The archives do not record whether Padre Pio ever spoke of the young man's fate. The testimonies preserve his silence, his prayer, his grief, but not an answer. And perhaps this is intentional. Perhaps the silence is itself the message. Because the question is not meant to be answered for the young man. The question is meant to be asked of ourselves. The listener who hears this account cannot remain a spectator. The narrative does not permit it. The young man is not an exception. He is not a cautionary tale from another era. He is a mirror. He is what any of us could be: ordinary, distracted, postponing, assuming. And his death is what any of our deaths could be: sudden, unannounced, final. The hour we do not expect. The moment we cannot prepare for in that moment, because preparation must happen before. What does it mean to be ready? The Church does not teach that readiness is the absence of sin. The Church teaches that readiness is the state of a soul that knows its need for mercy and is willing to receive it. A soul can be ready even in the midst of struggle, even in the midst of weakness, even in the midst of failure if it has not closed itself to grace. But a soul that has grown comfortable in its distance from God, a soul that has hardened itself through years of postponement, a soul that has lost the habit of turning toward mercy, such a soul may find, in the final moment, that it no longer knows how to turn. Not because mercy is refused, but because the soul no longer recognizes mercy as something it wants. This is the most terrible possibility. Not that God rejects the soul, but that the soul rejects God, and does so freely, finally, in full knowledge of what it is choosing. Padre Pio wept for some who died. He fell silent for others. His responses were not uniform, and those who witnessed them understood that he was seeing realities they could not see. But he never offered false comfort. He never assured grieving families that their loved ones were certainly saved. He prayed. He urged others to pray. And he reminded those who would listen that the time for preparation is not after death, but before now, today, in this present moment that we treat so carelessly. The young man who died that night had perhaps 20 years of life. He had gone to confession at least once. He had visited a saint. And yet none of this guaranteed anything. Because the only thing that matters is the state of the soul in the moment that matters, and that moment cannot be known in advance, cannot be scheduled, cannot be controlled. It comes when it comes. And when it comes, the soul responds with whatever it has become. There is no moral to this account. There is no lesson that resolves the tension. The young man is gone. His choice is made. His eternity is sealed. And we who remain are left with the same question that Padre Pio's silence left with those who witnessed his prayer. What would our own moment look like? What would we choose if the choice came tonight? Are we ready not in the sense of being perfect, but in the sense of being turned toward mercy, open to grace, willing to receive what God offers? The question cannot be answered theoretically. It can only be answered by the life we are living right now, in this moment, which may or may not be followed by another. Padre Pio knew this. He lived under the weight of this knowledge every day of his life. And when a young man died suddenly, he did not waste words on speculation about eternity. He prayed. He prayed with the intensity of someone who understood that prayer is not a religious formality, but an intervention in the most serious reality there is. He prayed as if something depended on it, because something did. The young man had one moment left. He used it, and so will we.